Hello, I'm Joshua Silverstein.
And I'm Evelyn Rudy.
And this is Santa Monica on Stage, where we talk about the people and venues that make the city of Santa Monica the cultural destination for the performing arts.
We have a great show for you today. We'll start with some activism in action with our pals at Public Works Improvisational Theater.
And then we're spending some quality time with the group you know pretty well, Evelyn. It's the fine folks at Santa Monica Playhouse.
I can't wait. Let's get going. Public Works Improvisational Theater is well known for creating pieces that strike at the heart of cultural activism. Often using contemporary events, they touch on both political and social relevance in their work. Let's take a peek at one of their touring productions performed at Sparring with Beatnik Ghosts.
When I went out to preach, every time I made a speech, I made some money. People would pay to hear what I'd say, 'cause when I was young I had a silver tongue. Yeah, I could speak to you and freak about your soul's salvation. This sin-filled nation, the dangers of temptation. Yeah, I could tell you all about sin and how it sucks you in, and how Jesus died so you wouldn't get fried. But when I'd come home, I was a prophet alone. I needed money. And that's when I started selling vacuum cleaners, door to door. I started selling vacuum cleaners like they was Jesus, and Jesus like he was a vacuum cleaner.
What a great name, and what great fun it is to have you back with us. I could listen to you for hours. Joining us now is the silver-tongued Lee Beck from Public Works Improvisational Theater Company. And I'm curious, because of the word improvisational, is your work all improvisational? Do you use improvisations to create your work, or how does that all fit in with Public Works?
Well, generally I've used improvisation to create my work. Our work is always produced by improvisational theater. We haven't been doing, for many years we did live improvisational show at the church here in Ocean Park, actually, for several years. Public Works had a live every Friday night. They had a show that was an improvised show, and even had a soap opera, an improvised soap opera.
How did that
involved in it. It was excellent. It was very good. About a bunch of people lived in an apartment house, you know.
were there tears and?
Oh yeah, no, it was real. It was funny, but it was also often very poignant.
Did people get attached to characters and then?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
How did you get involved with it, or did you start it?
Well, no, the company was started in 1974 by Marlene Rasnick and Dale Unson, who both lived here. Well, Dale lived in Santa Monica. At that time, she was married to Jim Kahn, who was the minister of the church in Ocean Park. And she and Marlene were good friends. And I just happened to come down from Northern California, where I'd been performing and doing shows for several years. I had a radio show there called the Brotherly Love Survival Revival Hour.
I heard about
on
that.
KZAP FM radio.
What was your voice on that program?
Well, very similar to the one I'm using now, only different. It was kind of a, you know, I spoke as a preacher.
Right.
Because I actually was a fundamentalist evangelist at a certain point in my life. So I don't know, I guess after I quit being a preacher, I did about 5 years of satire in my previous life. And I hooked up with the Greater Carmichael Traveling Street Band and Sanctified Singers, and we did this radio show on KZAP. And on KQED in San Francisco, we did the show there, and many demonstrations against the war and in favor of ecology, and we organized a dance around the nukes at Rancho Seco for 7 days, and at the end of that I blew my trumpet at it. patterning the whole thing after Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho.
That's why I'm Joshua.
Right.
What?
There you have
Best
it.
guest ever!
I was thinking about you then.
Thank you!
And so, you know, it was an activist-oriented kind of a theater, and it was a lot of fun, and
awesome.
very street theater-oriented in those days, you know, kind of the hippie era. And
I
we
wasn't
became
there, so
we
I didn't
became
know.
I know I'm sorry for you.
That's bad.
We had a kind of a commune on this hill, and it became known as Harmony Hill in downtown Fair Oaks in Sacramento. Anyway, that's previous, but so I came to Los Angeles to visit my friend Mitch Greenhill, who used to be in one of my bands that I managed in Sonoma County called The Frontier. And I answered an ad in the, what's the name of that? There was an oceanfront little newspaper for an improv class, and I went, and Marlene was the teacher. And she chose me out of everybody to roll across the room with her. And we rolled across the room and kept rolling together for about 30 years. We got married and lived together until she died of cancer 12 years ago this month.
But what a wonderful legacy.
Yeah.
What a wonderful
yeah,
legacy.
It's really great. So when by the time Marlene passed away, Dale had started another company called WIMS that did improv. It was a female group here in all women's group here in Los Angeles. And both Marlene and Dale died of cancer eventually, and so, you know, after Marlene died, I just picked up the mantle of Public Works. By the time she passed away, she and I were doing original pieces which we developed out of improv, usually with a jazz musician, and we kind of had carried on Public Works, the name of Public Works. There came a point when the women of Public Works decided to do a play about women and money. And they didn't want any.
Those don't go together in
This
any
was, no,
understand
they
how
usually
those
don't mix.
relate. Right, okay.
But the women didn't want any men in it, and some of the men in the company, you know, they didn't like that. So the company kind of began to dissipate in terms of men, and so by the end of that, they just kind of the company began. And Marlene and I lived in Silver Lake. We still live there, or I still live there. So it was a long ways to drive across town all the time. So eventually, we just kind of kept Public Works, and they started some other companies, and so that's kind of how I ended up with Public Works.
Does Voice in the Well, is that a Public Works series?
Voice in the Well is part of Public Works, but Voice in the Well actually has been going on for quite a while here in Los Angeles, on this side of town. It's I like to describe it as a salon, an art salon where people come. It's in the attic of the Warzawa restaurant right here at Santa Monica and Lincoln Avenue.
Awesome.
And it's I think it's the second Thursday of the month. It's coming up on, I think it's the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. And that's run by a fellow by the name of Eric Vollmer, who I'd hoped would be able to make it here tonight, but for some reason he didn't make it. I haven't heard from him.
He's fine.
But I think he's fine, hopefully. But Eric does an excellent job of hosting that, and he uses artists mostly from this side of town, and his idea has always been to get people who aren't necessarily performers to read things and to do what they do. And then he picks a theme, and it's usually very literary. And so it makes for a nice, very interesting evening, eclectic evening of music and theater and poetry and storytelling, that sort of thing.
Wonderful.
That's what we do a lot of.
How has improv affected your life as a performer, as a person?
Well, you know, when I was, I don't know, I feel like I've been improvising all my life. I
Right.
mean, even when I used to do a one-man show in Sacramento, and a fellow came up to me because I'd already said I was moving to L.A., and he said, when you get to L.A., look up Synergy Trust, which had actually been Marlene's previous company. So he'd already recommended her to me without me even knowing it. I had no idea who she was then. But
awesome.
So that was kind of interesting. And so when I found her and found out she and Dale had also started that company in Silver Lake, they used to do it at what used to be the feed store on Hyperion.
Okay.
And so, you know, it was kind of a nice connection. So, you know, I you know, when I preached, I had to improvise my sermons, and I just been doing it all my life. But with Marlene, you know, she had it down to a science, as does Viola Spolin in her book, and of course Paul Sills. So and you just follow the rules, play the games, and it takes the pressure off of having to act.
That's
or
wonderful.
Be nervous.
And it's wonderful to be able to use that to create a whole theater company that's been around for so many years. We thank you for taking time to share about Public Works Improvisational Theater Company.
Well, thank you. Enjoyed
Now,
it.
don't go anywhere. Lee's going to give us another treat today with a special performance. We'll be right back.
Experience Highways Performance Space and Gallery.
I knew my journey would lead me to a place
where I'd find a highway that I could travel to the beat of my own drum. Ride out the storm, 95 Joey died, but deadly was born. And there would be no limits to the vibrancy of my performance.
Join us each week at Highways Performance Space and Gallery and live without limits. Log on to highwaysperformance.org.
We're back. You've seen him chat, but now it's time to see him in action. Performing from The Spirit of Defiance, please welcome back Lee Beck.
The spirit of defiance is exhilarating. I first saw her when I was reading to the seniors of Sunset Hall, a home for old radicals, communists, socialists, and fellow travelers, nudists, and free thinkers. It was on Francis Avenue, started by the Unitarian Church in downtown Los Angeles on 8th Street back in the 50s. The people who were adults then decided they wanted a retirement home, and so they created Sunset Hall, and it was a lovely spot. The residents were all in their 80s or 90s. I was reading to the elders about something about Russia, and I came across the word Moscow in my reading, and suddenly a little woman sitting right there in the front row perked up. She was a victim of Alzheimer's, but this time she perked up her ears and said, "Moscow," with complete recognition. I later found out that Rose Chernin, which was her name, her husband had designed the subways of Moscow back in the early days of the Russian Revolution and had helped to create this beautiful wonderful subway they have there in Russia. So I was very impressed with her and tried to find out more about her. A woman by the name of Lena, one of the residents there in her 90s, said to me, "She was our leader, the leader of the Committee in Defense of the Foreign-Born." The eggs were scrambling, the coffee was perking. The FBI was outside lurking. They were lurking in the windows of two women, each in their own kitchen, each making breakfast for their own little family. Rose Chernin was making gefrechte matzah for her family, and she was taken away in her housecoat. Whereas Dorothy Healy was making golden, delicious brown waffles with maple syrup and butter and bacon and black coffee. She was allowed to change into her pedal pushers before they took her away. They were arrested under the Smith-McCarran Act. It was a lousy act. They were accused of trying to support the idea of violently overthrowing the United States. All these people at Sunset Hall were there, but many of them had been blacklisted, including Rose Chernin. It was a lousy act, and every night of the 6 months they were incarcerated, their sister comrades prepared them a beautiful home-cooked meal in a wicker basket, often accompanied by a fine bottle of wine, and brought right down to the L.A. County Jail. The spirit of defiance is exhilarating. The spirit of defiance is exhilarating. People willing to go to jail, baked potato. Commies bringing pickles to prison. Commies bringing pot roast to jail. Commies bringing rhubarb jello mold with sour cream and cherries to incarcerated comrades. The spirit of defiance is exhilarating. Thank you.
Over the past 53 years, Santa Monica Playhouse has impacted over 5 million people, all while never being dark for one single weekend. And that deserves an award for perfect attendance. Let's take a closer look at our friends at the Playhouse.
That parallels Europe, we're at the helm, maneuvering most off behind the scenes.
Great storm arose on the seas. Thunderbolts flash, the lightning flash, the raging waters create a trough reaching down between Neptune's basement.
When the night before Christmas goes by, when you hear sleigh bells ringing above you, and those 8 tiny reindeer appear in the sky, when Santa looks down on the rooftops and he sees your light afar, if he knows you're waiting, he'll find you, no matter where you
Incomparable, right? That's the best way to sum up this troupe. They are touring all over the world, and we're lucky to have them right here in Santa Monica every single week. Full disclosure, this lady right here to my right is the co-artistic director of the Playhouse, and yet she doesn't know anything about these guests in our theater. Welcome, Chris DiCarlo and Serena Dolinsky. I want to start with, give me some dirt on this lady right here. What awful things do you know about her that you can tell the world?
I only know the first night that I saw her, I was coming back from Vietnam. It was my first night, and she was doing a psychodrama class, and she was in the hot seat. And everybody was saying bad things about her, and all I could say is, this is a beautiful lady.
Oh, what were the bad things?
There weren't any.
So you guys are married?
Yes.
That's amazing. So, what makes this theater so amazing?
Well, we're the best kept secret in Santa Monica.
Okay.
And why I say that is people know us usually for one aspect of what we do. Either we do birthday parties, or we do family theater, or we do absurdist theater, or we do new works. But we do all of those things.
What's the absurdist theater?
Ionesco. We introduced Ionesco to Los Angeles in 1960.
Okay.
And we actually had him come to our venue and see our production and give us his blessings. He said, your fidelity to my original intent was amazing. And that was at the same night that the UCLA Bruin decided to say, this is not how Ionesco tended to do the play. So we had a little Annie Hall scene there. It worked out really well.
That's awesome.
Well, this is really weird because, well, I've been working with Chris for, well, over 43 years, and I've been working with Serena since she was 8 years old. And yet there are a lot of questions that I have never asked them and that I don't really know the answers to.
Ask them now.
So, Serena, you started with us when you were 8, and you have gone on to the American Academy, and you've taught and studied all over the world, and you work with us now. What is it like to go on that kind of a journey?
Well, being at the Playhouse, I've always felt I've had a safe haven, so that's always been a nice thing. You know, no matter where I go, I know I have my roots somewhere very specific where I have a place where I can explore and progress and then take those things to the outside. So it's like that safe laboratory where I can discover what I want to work on and pieces I want to develop, and then take that to the outside world and work with other people and teach classes, you know, wherever I end up in the world. So it's been a good experience that way.
That's awesome. And Chris, you have over 10,000 productions under your belt?
Performances.
like little tiny 1-second performances, right? Not full on.
Mostly full on.
So you're 25. How did you do that? What do you sleep? How? How did you? I want to know how.
Just being persistent.
Yeah.
Being persistent and being motivated. I'm driven. The work to me is about community. It's about connecting the world, and theater is a perfect universal language. So having that opportunity and being blessed with a space to work in and an audience that will listen or at least come and take part, that's very important to me.
Was it always theater for you? That was your calling?
Well, I started acting when I was 4 at Edison Elementary School. I did my first production of The Nutcracker Suite. I played a mouse. I was the second mouse. I was the second
Well,
lead.
that's the best mouse in the play.
Right. And I had no lines. I got to do my first pratfall.
And then you knew.
But
this is what.
I knew, but I think it was Vietnam that changed me and brought me to realize that there is something more important than my ego gratification.
Yeah, right.
And my need for attention. And so I've spent a lot of time reflecting on that experience and trying to bring some of those values that I discovered in terms of what is our humanity and what is our responsibility as individuals and as a community to nurture that humanity, and how can we best do that. And for me, theater, bringing people together to participate in a vicarious experience in the moment with each other, is such a bonding experience and an opportunity to encourage a dialogue or a discourse or just ask questions. And that helps. I think if we stop asking questions, we're in trouble.
Serena, Chris was talking about a vicarious experience, but you're involved a lot, and Chris too, in our short burst theater projects. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Those projects are all about bringing people from all walks of life together to explore things, themes, interests, things that are important to them that they want to put into the world and have a dialogue about. So Chris talks about creating that dialogue. So the short burst workshops are bringing everyone together, discovering themes that are unique but yet universal for all of us, and then creating a piece of theater about them. So walking through the steps of how to act, how to perform from your own artistic voice, from your own what's important to you, what do you want to say to the world, what do you want to celebrate in the world, what do you want to change in the world, and then creating a piece about that. So it's really bringing every type of person together that may not usually have an opportunity to talk to each other, to express their own issues to each other and create this work.
So it's not just actors. It's
right.
just normal members of the
from all
community.
walks of life. So the actors usually involved are, us bringing these people together, but, it's everyone of all ages as well. Anyone who has an interest in getting involved in the arts and just in self-expression.
But I love that you guys are taking this activism approach to it. Like, it's about what they have to express, what's their truth.
Right.
What are some of the themes that come up in some of the work you guys do?
All kinds of things. I mean, definitely things that are global and community oriented, about, wanting to change cultural aspects, where they feel misunderstood or ignored, lots of personal things about trust and honesty and relationships that comes up, and then global things. How do people view me? How do I be understood? How do I get my voice heard? So,
and you were 8 talking about this stuff?
Right, and that's great about our youth workshops, because it's the same thing, like even if they're 4 years old, we say, well, what interests you? What do you want to talk about?
And what do they say when they're
all kinds
4?
of things. When they're 4, it starts with things like their happiness, wanting to be with their family.
That never changes. Continue.
Right,
okay.
and sometimes the 4-year-olds are really poignant, and they talk about, bullying in their schools, a kid that's mean to them and they just want to be happy, things like that.
So 4 and 32 as the same exact experience.
Yes, definitely.
That makes me sad. Okay, cool. Well, are we out of time? That's out of time. Okay, so you guys, thank you, Chris. Serena, it's awesome to have you guys at the show.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome
for having
people.
us. Thank you.
We're not quite done, so stick around because Serena is coming back with a few of her pals for a performance you don't want to miss.
I thought I had everything under control. Then, one day, something happened. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know there was help. Until someone told me.
providing access to justice, the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles can help with domestic violence issues, eviction defense, government benefits, immigration, and other civil legal issues.
And now for your viewing pleasure, Santa Monica Playhouse presents Theater Roscius members Serena Dolinsky, Constance Strickland, and Gibri Van Over from a scene from their production, Her, She, Me.
They say she was a victim of beauty.
They say her hair is too short.
They say she looks like a man.
They say she looks better skinny.
They say her butt's too big.
They say blondes have more fun.
They say she's fat.
They say she talks too loud.
They say her nose is too big.
They say she can't have it all.
They say she ain't pretty.
They say her skin looks too dark.
They say she's a whore.
They say she asked for it.
They say she's weak.
They say she's damaged goods.
They say she's too old.
When in doubt, wear lipstick.
What wonderful performances. Every time I see Lee Beck, I'm so impressed by his stature and his presence and his voice.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Brilliant. And I hadn't seen that piece by Theodore Roscius before. I thought it was really beautiful.
It was, Serena was amazing in that piece. I want to see the show. I can't wait to see the show. So you have been in theater, and you have worked at the theater for how long?
Well, I started at the Playhouse in 1966. At the same time I started at UCLA, and I've been there ever since.
And you're the youngest person in the world to receive a what for what?
An Emmy nomination for Eloise on Playhouse 90. I was 6 years old, and I actually started in the business when I was 3.
So that was 25 years ago.
Oh,
yay, I win, I win. Well, you're epic.
Well,
you're epic.
You are epic too.
Oh, good.
Mutual Admiration Society.
Good.
That's our show for today. Every week we're continuing our journey towards learning more about the arts groups that make Santa Monica's cultural world so rich.
We look forward to seeing you next time as we introduce you to a few more of our friends here at Santa Monica On Stage.